And now we'll move on to the next presentation, McGowan. Welcome.
Hi.
Whenever you're ready, just introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Anita McGowan, and I was also a parent rep on the ARC committee. I'm also a parent of 3 children at DAlewood and George R. Allen. And I thought it was important to just discuss some of my background in and then continue on with the projections. So I have academic training in measurement and evaluation. I also conducted for a few years some research in clinical epidemiology, worked in the healthcare system in utilization management, and before I had my last child, I was the finance director at Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. So my academic and professional experience, I've done a lot of work with business case development, population and projections and utilization analysis. When I look at the data that was presented by, do I hit enter? Sorry. The board, I had a few questions as the group did. And the first question you would want to ask is, when you're doing projections, what is your track record? Do you, when you look at the projections that you've done, past performance predicts future performance. So we looked at the 2003 accommodation strategy, and we saw, as was presented in January, that there was significant variance, as much as 90%. So the numbers for GR Allen, where there was a variance of 90% between what was projected and what actually occurred, and 67% at Prince Philip. And when the question was asked by the trustees back to the board, it was, why would we have such a significant variance? And the answer, rightly so, is there are many changes in the population and programs, and that accounted for the variation. So I thought, well, why don't I look at the projections that were given to you, the Committee of the Whole, in January 2011. So a short time frame from that point to now, a year. And I looked at the ARC projections that were given to us in April of that same year and compared them to the data that was given to you in January 2011. So if you look at the 10-year projections for both the ARC numbers and the numbers that were given to you, we see that there was a 30% variance in the numbers between George R. Allen. So again, pretty significant variance between the projections for the same population. There were no changes in programs that were projected. I corrected for the full-time equivalents. So that leads me to believe that, and this is the case with all projections, they are your best guess, and you change the methodology and the numbers change. But it isn't an exact science, and it is very difficult to project out 1 year. It's difficult to project out 5 years. It's extremely difficult to have high accuracy when you're going out 10 years. So the second point that I think is important to make is, let's look at the projection methodology, and let's look at the subpopulations in the numbers that the board is giving us, which they believe, and they've stated in the paper, they feel very confident that the numbers are accurate. If you look at the subpopulations, so we have the Mandarin program, we have the French immersion program, and the English program across 3 schools. The Mandarin program, as Michael stated, is a program in its infancy that has just been approved for expansion. In its infancy, the numbers are low. There's a full day kindergarten program that will actually expand the base capacity of that program. The projection of 9 could go up to 11 or 13 per year, and if you look at that from JK to grade 4, the numbers actually could increase projections by as much as 75 kids. When we look at the special education program, the numbers that were included in the projections were grossly underestimated. And I looked at the numbers we had historical numbers, and we see that the enrollment that were in each of these programs was much higher than the projection going forward. And I don't understand where the variance could be, but that's another one. We talked at the last meeting, the January meeting, about the out of catchment practice. And if you look at the next slide, this was presented at the public meetings. You see that they provide a base population, which is in gray, the French immersion enrollment for Dundas, and that was one of the questions, and then the out of area catchment. So the assumption, as you can see, is that the out of area and the French immersion enrollment from those two populations disappears. We know that in the kindergarten program in both schools, the enrollment was significantly higher than it had been in past years. And we know that in those populations, we had out of catchment kids. And the reason at George R. Allen was because if a child is, that school is closed to out of catchment, but if your daycare is in catchment, then they could accept those kids. So those kids are in the system according to the policy. They will be there for the next 10 years. There are other children that are out of catchment that will be in those numbers, so they've been excluded. We were also told at the January 16th meeting that the full-day kindergarten schools will be closed for a period, and then they will be opened up. So the practice, these schools, have, as we've heard, have excellent reputations. The student performance is excellent, and parent engagement is exceptional. So these are magnet schools that parents want to get into. So even if we see that and I'll talk about that a bit later, even if we see that the numbers are dropping, the policy states that if there is capacity, it is up to the principal it's at the principal's discretion that they can accept out of catchment students. So when you look at the components of the base population, the French immersion, and I should step back, the French immersion, there was a question about what were the number of kids from the Dundas population. The impact of the opening of Guy Brown and Dundana is almost completely felt through the system, and we still have French immersion kids filling those spots. So we have some kids in the grade 5 program that would move out, and then the full effect would have been felt. We do have French immersion children who are out of catchment through a variety of means, and they're in the system, but they're not from Dundas. They're from Burlington and other areas. Another interesting point, when you look at the base population, these projections were completed on September 8th. And when you looked at the October 31st enrollment data, which was presented to the Board of Trustees, we see that 97 JK students were enrolled in George R. Allen and Prince Philip. The projection that was done on September 8th indicated that that would be 75. So when you look at the October 31st data, we were already over 22 kids, and they will track through the system. So the projection for September for 2011, 2012 was, oh sorry, I didn't see your sign. 2 minutes, was already 34 students under what the actual projection was. So what I did was I looked at the staff's projection. I used the exact same methodology that they did, corrected for the Mandarin special education program, and used the October 31st data, tracked that back 3 years to use the average, and came up with a midpoint. So the board projection drops down to the red, and that's 815. If you use the exact same methodology and correct for conservative assumptions, that number increases to 970. If I use a very liberal assumption that it will continue to increase at the rate that we've enrolled students in October, that's almost 1,000. So if you're looking at closing a school, the difference between our population today and 970 and 1,000, that's between 30 and 60 kids. Is it really worth closing a school for 30 children? So in conclusion, I believe that the projections are grossly underestimating the future population based on what's happening today.
For clarification, Trustee Brennan?
Not so much to the speaker, but in terms of the presentation, and I know we had some slides to look at, but there were assumptions that the presenter expressed, and I'm assuming, and I just want to double check, that Tracy is in fact keeping notes on that commentary from speakers so that we can look a little closer at the comments, because I'm listening and I'm not necessarily seeing things in front of me, so I just wanted to know.
If there are key figures that, it's all in my head, but I can certainly do a narrative that would support the slides. And would I send that to Tracy?
That's fine, yeah. Just general, you're just doing general.
And I wondered, now that retrospectively I'm now realizing that my assumption was incorrect.
Yeah.
So
Tracy is going to do a general,
yes,
but you need to keep your notes.
And I'm doing that, but there are some assumptions that were coming rather fast and furious, and I didn't take them all down, and I think it will be important for me.
We'll be able to also look at the videotape as well. No, there's the videotape.
Okay.
So you can watch it. Yes.
Having said that, I'm sorry, that may not be totally successful for me. The presenter has already offered to do a narrative that could be sent around, and I'd be happy to see that. So I know that's extra work, but I appreciate that. And also the camera is actually at the back end of the presenter, and you know, I'm at the stage where I'm now lip reading, so so I would, that may not be satisfactory for me. So I just want to know then, and I don't want other people to do tremendous amount of work. Thank you, 30-second wrap up. If Mr. Michael Reed, who also had a verbal here rather than something written, if that could also be
Thank you.
Something he might be able to do for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'd be happy, and they could send that through to Tracy or the director's office.
Sure.
Send through.
Yeah,
Any other questions for clarification, Trustee Turkstra?
I guess I'm intrigued about the projection from September the 8th to October 31st, that variance, and particularly about what's attracting students for special education to the school. And do we know the impact of Innovation Park on that community in terms of daycares, which would be in catchment, which would then pump up the enrollment for the area, new developments that might be happening because of Innovation Park. I don't know if there's some condo projects or anything like that that are going in around that area, or is it a commercial application?
Is that directed to staff, I'm assuming?
Pretty much,
Okay.
yeah. Unless, of course, you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Looking for a motion. Thank you, Trustee Brennan with a quick hand there, and Trustee Johnstone seconding. That's a motion to receive, I'm assuming.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. All those in favor of that? Thank you, trustees. That's unanimous. Tracy, you got the names of the trustees? Thank you. Okay, good.